Next up, we're joined by Mia Kyricos, one of the industry's foremost experts on both the business and practice of well-being. Please give a virtual welcome to Mia and Skift President Carolyn Kremens for a discussion on well-being in the post-COVID era.
Hi, Mia. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Hi, Carolyn. Great to see you too, and so am I.
Mia, if there's anything the pandemic accelerated, it's the importance of well-being, particularly as it applies to how we live, work, and travel. Now, I know you, Mia, you know me, and I'm sure for many of us who are listening in this industry, we were spinning out of control, right? We were running through airports, we were sleeping all over the world, we were working around the clock, and that became the norm for so many years. And then the pandemic hit, right? And we were forced inward, both physically and emotionally. And after months of living like this, there has been this huge realization that there has to be a better way to design the future that's more fulfilling, that's more empathetic, responsible, and just overall better for us as humans. So Mia, let's start there. Is there some silver lining in this crisis as it relates to designing the future with well-being at the core?
Absolutely, and I could not agree more with everything that you just said. I personally resonated with me, and professionally it did too. I have been calling COVID-19 as the great catalyst for not just the business of wellness and well-being, for the well-being of people, planet, and community. And I really think one of the gold linings of 2020, and I say gold, not silver, because it's
I like that.
Is that really our well-being, whether it be of ourselves individually, our families, our teams, the communities that we live in many ways, we got to a place where it was just spinning out of control, like you said. And being forced to stop was uncomfortable, but really necessary. And I think the shift that's happened is that our wellness, not just the safety and the immediate hygienic concerns that we have to stay safe and socially distanced and so forth, but really the concert that takes place between our minds, our bodies, our emotions, our spirit, all of that was a nice to have before, and now it's a need to have.
Yeah, definitely. It's just a time to pause and reflect, right? So,
Right.
See, we just talked about well-being from sort of like a personal experience, but what about well-being as it pertains to the workplace, right? Like, so up and through now, we've seen a lot of companies sort of take a shot at well-being, but I've got to say that I think most of it has been lip service, right? Like it's kind of like a nice to have, like you just said. And while companies may have good intentions and they'll add in a couple of programs here and there, it didn't really feel like well-being was being integrated into companies' cultures. So what responsibility does a company have to its employees, especially now as concern over mental health is at an all-time high?
Quite honestly, Carolyn, I can't think of a greater responsibility. I think it needs to be priority one. You know, we had a mental health crisis in particular before the pandemic started, and we entered 2020 that way. And now we've all been forced to pause. There's been massive change in our personal and professional lives and even in our own communities. And so I think companies really need to take this into account, that it's not just about the products and services and the perks that they might offer their colleagues from a health and wellness standpoint, but it needs to be much more about how we work, and really understanding, you know, what it takes to be well in the workplace and what it takes to foster a culture of well-being. It's time that we shift from programs, your workplace wellness program, to the culture of living, working, and being well at work. And so I do think that it's a huge shift. And I think companies really need to think of it now, because it's directly tied to how they'll perform in the future and come out of this crisis.
Yeah, yeah, and it's definitely will be on their report card, I think, along with everything else, just in terms of, I think wellness is now, rising to the top of that. So you are a foremost wellness guru, and what advice do you have? Like, are there any tips that you have for if you're running a company? If you're head of HR for a company, like we have a lot of company owners who are just listening now to being as part of this conference. What advice do you have to improve health and wellness at work?
I have lots of advice, but I've tried to narrow it down to 3 tips that I find myself giving to business owners, even officials in public health, private, public entities, whether you're large, small, publicly traded or not. And the tips I'm going to give actually don't cost any money. And I thought that was the way
People will like that.
That's why I whittled down my list.
Right.
The number one thing I would ask anyone who wants to really improve health and wellness at work is to ask the question, what is on your stop list? What have you decided strategically with the help of your leadership team, and ideally have turned around and asked your colleagues and employees, how are you going to stop doing? Most everyone I know, every company I know have cut their budgets, had to lay off valued workforces, are having to do so much more with less. And I always ask myself, have you constricted what you do to a similar degree? What are you stopping in the spirit of focusing on what's critically important to your business, to your brand, to your core values? And that exercise alone will help you to better prioritize and really positively impact the health and wellness of your colleagues who are working without some of their friends and half a budget, if any budget. And so I would say that's a huge activity. So that would be number one. The second thing I would say is to ask yourself that question that we just spoke about. Is wellness at work in your company, if you're talking about it at all, about the perks and the products and services that you're offering to your colleagues, or is it about how you live and work? So what I mean by that is you might, if you're still operating on site, you have offered a gym. Maybe you've offered healthy food and hydration in your cafeteria. Maybe you've provided a subscription to a Headspace or a Calm. To me, that's all just products or services that you're offering, but it's not exclusively focusing on how you are working. How are you working together? Are you respecting people's time off? Are you really checking in with people one-on-one to understand what they now need to be successful? If they're working at home or in their place of work, have you really connected and really started to foster that culture of well-being? And then the third tip I would give you is somewhat related to that. And that's really asking yourselves honestly, is your leadership team coming from a place that's focusing on what the challenges are every day, where the fear is or the firefighting? Or are you taking that moment, and I'm not suggesting that this is easy, but are you taking a moment to help people focus on what's going well, on what's going right? Are you taking a moment to be grateful for those things and for the people that have helped make them happen? Really, that's something you need to focus on. So if I had to summarize those 3 things, it's what's on your stop list. Is your wellness efforts really a program or a culture at work? And then 3, is your leadership style coming from a place of challenges and firefighting, or are you taking time to recognize and acknowledge the good? And those 3 things will actually help you make tremendous progress as we find ourselves to 2021.
Wow, I love that. I love that. And like you said, these are things that don't cost any money, right? So it's just really such a shift in being thoughtful, in being caring, in being empathetic to your coworkers. And I think that, and the stop list, oh my gosh, I got to start thinking about that, because I'm sure I have a very long one I can compile. So we talked about wellness in the workplace and also personal wellness. But now, what about wellness as it pertains to travelers, right? So in response to COVID, hotels and airlines, they're all striving to make travelers feel safe by deploying a lot of safety standards and new technologies. And they're augmenting it a bit with hygiene theater to build traveler confidence, right? So
Right.
how important is it, do you think, Mia, for hotels and airlines to continue with this messaging around safety? And ultimately, do you think it will impact loyalty to these brands in the long term? Or do you think it's just going to go by the wayside when we're past this?
I really have I would say, a short-term and longer-term view on this. In my opinion, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, but COVID has done that for travel, tourism, and hospitality. For those companies and brands or even single unit properties or boutiques out there that are seeing this for the first time, I really feel like if your loyal customers, if they're returning to your properties or the Friendly Skies or eventually, hopefully, the cruise industry, if they're coming back for their first time after being at home, and if you find a way to earn their trust and you make that great first impression or re-earn that trust, I honestly think you'll be mating for life. I really think that you'll be earning their loyalty for life because, we can't underestimate the fact that our confidence has been shaken. Even those people that love to travel, whether for work or leisure, it can be scary sort of reemerging and packing that suitcase again for the first time. And so I think companies and brands really need to look at this as almost like it's the first time and people are coming to you. And if you earn their trust on the hygiene theater, as you said, you're just going to open the doors to all these experiences that you can really bring to life more meaningfully once we get past the initial return and the initial fear of cleanliness and safety. And I also think on a personal level, and I would say this for owners and brands again around the globe, we have this amazing opportunity to make travel special again. I mean, think about that. Yes, we may travel a bit less, but it's going to be more meaningful travel. And I think we were all talking about wanting to deliver incredible experiences, but those experiences were dramatically impacted by, honestly, how busy and insane travel had gotten. So I really do feel like we have an opportunity to rethink that. I think we have an opportunity to make travel special again. Both by the brands and then also as business leaders who are sending our colleagues on the road again, and also with our families as we're thinking about where we should go together. These trips might be less frequent, but I think they're going to be so much more special. And I think we have a great opportunity for our industry to hit it out of the park.
Have you stayed in a hotel since the pandemic started?
I have.
Yeah. And what's your take from that?
I have to tell you, and I would say this from the moment I left the door until I stayed at a hotel, I felt safer in the air than I did on the ground in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the steps that have been taken, it's incredible. I think, it's much like when you're cleaning house or moving, you get to throw out things you don't want and focus on the things that you do. I was very impressed with that. And my experience at a hotel was absolutely fantastic. And I have to say, I think it's because it was a boutique hotel. It wasn't one of the big brands, but they were so grateful to have me back and have my husband back. And, it's almost like what we took for granted is once again special. So I encourage people to get out there. You can do it safely. You can pick destinations where you feel comfortable. And of course, it'll take some time, but I think the world is ready for us.
Yeah. At Skift Global Forum, one of the executives had said that they did research, and it's like the biggest hurdle is getting people to take that first trip. But once they do, they will see and have more confidence to travel again. So I have not yet stayed at a hotel, but I intend to in the next few weeks. So,
And it's a scary thing to say right now, given where our figures are, but I do think we are going to start learning how to live with it. I haven't done it frequently, but my first impression was fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. So, with wellness, we know was a macro super trend before the pandemic, but this certainly has accelerated it. What do you think when you look long term, like think 5 years from now? What innovations do you see evolving now that you think will have legs and will stay here for good in like 5 years from now or so?
Well, on the plus side, I think we have the opportunity to finally crack the nut on how to impact the lives of our consumers between hotel stays and travel stays, and really enable them to take some aspects of travel home with them. We've already started to see, actually pretty early on in the pandemic, brands like Six Senses, for example, that took Six Senses at home. We've seen others do that. And those are things that we wish we could do before the pandemic, somehow get them to take us home with them in some way, whether it's buying products and services remotely or so forth. So I really do expect to see more virtual aspects and really a rise again, a resurgence in digital commerce and consumers buying things that they love at their favorite travel and tourism brands, for example, and bringing them home. And I think for wellness specifically, I do think we're going to see a rise in technology-driven partnerships that will enable more consumption of wellness virtually, but also sort of coexist with more meaningful, deeper, impactful experiences while traveling. I think we are going to focus on getting rid of unnecessary spaces or maximizing the space that we already have in new ways with products and services, because I don't really see demand for wellness disappearing anytime soon. I think it's been put front and center.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like the extension of all those products, when you bring it home and you get to sort of hang on to those memories and those routines and the things that you've learned and all of that. So yeah, that makes sense. So listen, we've been hearing a lot of people talk about the rise of revenge travel, right? Like we all have that pent up desire to get back out in the world. But is there something similar in wellness? Like, do you think that there's this pent up revenge around wellness?
Absolutely. And I would say we saw a similar phenomenon right after 9/11. It's in times when we're sort of reminded of our mortality and how precious life is and experiences are, that we have an increased willingness to spend money on ourselves, really as a preventative measure to ensure our longevity, live a richer life, and so forth. After 9/11, we saw things like massage increasing again, and people taking time for themselves. And I anticipate the same to be true, really both during and after COVID. I think we'll find that the things we used to consume and feel guilty about, perhaps it was a massage or visiting a hot spring or meeting with an energy healer or having one-on-one yoga or meditation sessions, and the list continues. These things will be far less, will be more guiltless, I would say, moving forward, because there's so much more science and evidence behind their effectiveness and their positive impact to our health and well-being. And I think people aren't tolerating taking less care of themselves than they do for colleagues and guests and so forth. So I really do think that the evidence is really going to win out, and people are going to be willing and wanting to spend time and money on products and experiences that really positively impact our health and wellness, whether that's at home or for business or even leisure travel, of course.
Yeah, definitely. So I know we're running low on time here. So I guess in closing, listen, the pandemic, it's given us more time to focus, right? Like you mentioned, on our physical self and on our mental well-being. It gave us time to appreciate our families more, hopefully. And, and we're living, as you mentioned, we're living and working smarter and more intentionally, right? And I know you just talked about all the things that we're doing, and the doing it without guilt, which I think is really also an important note to emphasize. But Mia, okay, between us, right? After the pandemic, right? Years behind, are we just going to go back to the way things were? Like, am I going to see you running through the airport with your suitcase, waving as you're on your way to Asia and then Europe and wherever else it may be? Like, what do you think? You think that did we change our ways?
My personal hope is that we will take one of those trips together. So let's put that on our wish list. But honestly, and I know everyone's going to think I'm just shining sunshine. I think it will be very difficult, both commercially and personally, to return to the way we lived and worked up until March of 2020. I mean, the reality is sometimes life gives you exactly what you need in an unexpected package. And I really do believe that COVID-19 is just that. I mean, like you've mentioned, we slowed down. We've spent more time with our families. We've been kinder to our neighbors, despite what politics might have you believe. We have more respect for our teachers and for our healthcare workers. We've had more time to appreciate and be in nature, and we've learned how to do more with less and still be successful in our businesses. So I guess I'm going to answer your question with a question, which is, who would want to go back to the way things were?
That's true. That's true. Well, as you said before, Mia, it's the gold lining. I love that. And here is to you and to everyone else who is participating today to have a future of good health, good balance, and may we learn something from this moment. So thank you, Mia. Thank you for joining us. So happy to have you here.
I'm toasting to that with my green tea. So thank you so much.
Cheers.
Later.